Okay, so welcome everybody. People who don't know the Global School Alliance before, welcome to all you new people, and welcome to all of the familiar faces that we've got, and some great familiar speakers too. I'm really looking forward to today. It's going to be an exciting one, and as I was saying to before we started, we're all looking forward to seeing the end of 2020 and looking forward to 2021. But I think we have a lot. We've learned a lot. There's been a lot of new things to learn this year, so it's going to be an interesting chat today. If I just do the basics, as in to remind everyone to remain muted, you'll come in muted and remain muted unless you're asked to speak. And please introduce yourselves in the chat. And if you've got any questions for any of the speakers, please put it into the chat and we'll sort of address them at the end, if that's okay. So put your name and your question and we will get back to you for any of the speakers. So if I just go through who we are again. So the agenda for today, we're looking at introducing ourselves. If nobody has known the Global School Alliance before, we'll just go through who we are, what we do. Then we'll have the guest speakers, which is the prize of the day. And we'll have the question and answer at the end, if that's okay. So Global School Alliance, I think we are an online community. And the whole point is to unite educationists around the world. It's mostly for collaboration support. The year we've had this year, the support has been fabulous, and I think that's why something like this works so well. The world is shrinking, and I think it's shown how connected we all are, if nothing else. And so having this platform for us all to communicate and collaborate and commiserate and everything was our aim for setting this up, and I think it's doing fabulously. We've got so many lovely members; it's great. So we're basically, the common goal is collaboration, really, and uniting the world. Thinking about things like that. So our general goals were looking at things beyond the classroom, supporting teachers to encourage cultural diversity and tolerance, pushing boundaries at the moment. I think tolerance and awareness don't always go together. So this is another reason why we're all supporting each other and creating this great community together. So like I say, plan is to give a chance for everyone to have a voice, for sharing ideas, and hopefully facilitating actual physical moving around the world in the future, but getting to know each other online to begin with, which is a great goal. And like I say, I think we have over 780 members now from over 70 countries, countries that I didn't even know existed, which is fantastic. So it's a learning experience every day, which is great. So the Global School Alliance is free to join. We have a few different sort of memberships. The members as a school, you can join as a school, you can join as an individual, just an educationalist. And if you want to get more involved, you can be an Ambassador Pro, which means you can actually access some discounts and share it with networks and get more involved. But it's all free to join at the moment. So that's why we're doing so well. And that's the whole point. It's a community. It's everyone joining. So the advantage as well of being a member is that you can actually then access the Facebook page as well. So it'll be like we've got a closed Facebook group, so we can communicate with each other. You can share with the speakers. You can have good chats on there, share resources and ideas on the Facebook group. So again, it's another way of communicating. So what we'll be doing is we'll be recording today's conference, and the recording will be available for all members. It'll be sent out to members, but it'll also be on the Facebook group for you to see in the future. And again, you'll get, as long as you've registered that you're participating, you'll get a certificate for joining as well. So I think we've got quite a few people joining on. If I just go straight ahead, I think, and keep just going through. So we've got a bit of a change actually to the sequence of speakers. We've got some fantastic speakers. I've got Louisa from the UAE, we've got Seda from Turkey, Patrick from Bolton in the UK, and Tatiana from Moldova. But unfortunately, can we stay muted, please, and so we can hear the speakers? Is that okay? So we're changing the sequence slightly, and we're going to start with Tatiana. So Tatiana, would you like to share screen and kick us off with this exciting subject? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen. So I'm Tatiana Popa from the Republic of Moldova. I'm the global head of global education at Heritage International School, and also this year I started being the hybrid learning coordinator because we are in a new reality with different needs. So 2020 has been a tough year for all of us, all around the world, including all the teachers at Heritage International School. But I can definitely say that we have come of age at this global pandemic that we are in 2020. It has changed completely the way we deliver lessons. We are on the hybrid learning at the moment. It means we have the students in class and some of the students online, and the teacher has to connect with both groups of students, which is a tough job, but not impossible. So just to start, so here in the pictures, you can see the images from my students and I visiting the Irish consulate in Moldova. They organized a competition for St. Patrick's Day, and two groups of mine got to be the winners. So in February, we were invited to celebrate together. It was the time when we were allowed to have physical gatherings, let's say. And on the 11th of March, when the lockdown was announced for Moldova, we were lucky enough to have the entire community, teachers and students, all on the Google Suite for Education. So it took us one day to get all the members of staff familiar with all we had to do. We had the online safety policy in place. We had the crisis management plan updated over the weekend because the administration thought it would be coming. Starting next day after the trainings, we had two trainings for the primary and secondary teachers. The next day, we started to get connected with the students that were at home. And the following day, we had already full lessons in school. The teachers were still in school, teaching the students who were at home. And of course, we shared on the social media, and then the Ministry of Education got to see our activity, and we were contacted on a Saturday and asked to meet with the Ministry of Education because they wanted us to share with them what we were doing and how we were doing things. So we had a Saturday afternoon meeting with the Minister of Education and the State Secretary. And on the next day, working day, on a Monday, we had the national TV and visit to our school in order to see how we were delivering the lessons online. Our director made it clear that doing nothing was not an option in the pandemic. So we had to adjust our teaching to the reality that we were in. And it was clear that one size could not fit all the students. So each school had to choose the way it was better for them to operate in that situation. Also, which was the defining moment for our school, our academic director was invited to be on the task force for the ministry to elaborate the online safety policy and the regulations for distance learning. And I was also invited to be a national trainer for educators around the country in order to show how to use Google tools for education in order to connect with students who are at home. In the images, you can see exactly what we were doing. And as a result, we helped the Ministry of Education, and Moldova was, as a leading country in Eastern Europe, on distance learning, while at the same time, we all know that 90% of children worldwide were not in school. And we helped gladly to elaborate the distance learning policy in Moldova. Thus, my school was named as one of the 3 key partners of the Ministry of Education in the spring lockdown. Of course, our director shared his experience in conferences around the world. As we use Google Suite for Education, I got to speak to the IT specialists at the ministry, as a result, they decided that Google Suite is really useful and good for being used nationwide. So in the summer, the Ministry of Education signed a memorandum with the Google company, and now any school in Moldova can write a formal letter to the ministry and get the Google Suite for their school to use at the moment after the spring pandemic. We had also, my country had some really good people who decided to create an online virtual library for educators with video lessons for all the subjects on the national curriculum in Romanian, and of course for the languages in foreign languages as well. So these lessons are available, they are being renewed, updated and added still, because we don't know how it will continue in 2021. But just to make sure, this is how we ended the school year. You can see the meeting with all the heritage community when we celebrated the last day of school, also online, of course, with parents, teachers and students. So we gladly shared what we could share with all the educational community around the world. You can see me talking to partners and organizers from the US Embassy and the teachers in North Carolina that had a partnership with Moldova for more than 20 years. We shared for the Future Classroom Lab. We shared for the UK Chat Conference in May, UNICEF webinars and many others. In the autumn, when we started having students in school, we started our climate action project in Moldova. It was for the first time and the fourth year globally. So we got to receive a letter from the Ministry of Education supporting our project. I wrote articles for Radio Free Europe promoting the project and getting Moldovan teachers into the project. So we had more than 120 teachers from my country joining it. As you can see, we shared with in video conferences with India, with Spain, Romania. We had lots of connections with educators and students all around the world, discussing causes and effects of the climate change. Also, we planted some trees in the courtyard of our school. And then at the end of the project, when we had to close the project, we had a one-day webinar, which was more than 8 hours long. And I was selected one of the 6 teachers worldwide to share our experience in the project. So my students had the possibility to go live and to present in front of tens of thousands of students and teachers around the world. And also, my students had the possibility to ask the NASA experts questions about their future plans and what they do and many other interesting things. And we even got our capital mayor, Ivan Chaban, to take the pledge and to share a video on that final day, promising to turn our capital in a greener and more sustainable city. Then we have a founders lecture series at our heritage school. So this is the 2nd year, and we started it with the British ambassador to Moldova, Mr. Stephen Fisher. They come and talk about the interesting things they do. These are special guests that inspire our students and make them feel the connection between their education and the real world. We also had the head of the United Nations in Moldova, Simon Springett, telling about SDGs, what they do about it, United Nations branches, and many other interesting things. Then we had Vinicia Bellers, who is a humanitarian aid expert, and she spoke about how their organization responds to crises or disasters happening worldwide. Such interesting presentations. And on the next day, she had to fly to South America. So as we started with the Irish Embassy, we will finish it tomorrow the same way, having as a guest speaker for the Founders Lecture, the Irish Ambassador that is in Bucharest. He will provide information about how Ireland got to stop immigration in their country and how they developed after the hardship they had. So on this positive note, as we met at the beginning of the year physically, and now we are online, we really hope that 2021 will be more physical and less online as 2020 was. And even so, my conclusion and the entire community of Heritage School came all together. Supporting each other was the most important thing, and getting in contact with educators from all around the globe and supporting each other and sharing the best practices and being inspirational to one another was the best part of 2020. This is all I can say about it. Thank you. We can't hear.
I thought I had unmuted. Beg your pardon. Thank you so much, Tatiana. And we'll go straight on to Louisa, if that's okay. If we can put questions in the sidebar, and we'll get to them at the end. But we're looking forward to Louisa taking over now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. Right, here we go. So thank you. Okay, so I've been assistant head pastoral for the last 6 years at Brighton College in Al Ain, and Al Ain is in the Northern Emirate of Abu Dhabi in the UAE. I have 20 years or over 23 years experience in teaching, and I started in Norfolk before moving to Ascot and Windsor, and then down to the southwest. And then my adventure led me to Dubai before moving over to Abu Dhabi. So I've had quite a varied journey, and that has certainly helped me over the course of this year. I am a PE specialist, but I have taught many different subjects, and something that I wanted to just add was that I am a mum, and I do think that really did help keep me grounded and kept bringing me and the people I work with back to really focusing on the children that we were best supporting. So obviously, you know, the challenges we faced, we were certainly going into the unknown, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't apprehensive and scared, like probably most people or everyone around the globe. I remember that first crisis meeting that we had, where we were told that we're finishing school on Thursday, the staff aren't allowed to travel, and that the spring break was being moved forward. It caused a sense of anxiety that and maybe even we were in a holiday, then going into distance learning. And it was a strange time because we didn't know what we were going to face. We had to implement distance learning at a very short notice in a school where we didn't have our VLE set up. And a lot of our children didn't necessarily have the tools to hand or at home. Many of our families have multiple siblings. You know, it's not uncommon for some of our families to have 4, 5, 6, 7 children in their household, to have poor internet because of where we are located. So being able to implement distance learning at short notice wasn't a straightforward thing. And something that really was dear to my heart was obviously in being in pastoral and working with my colleague, was how we were going to best support and care for our vulnerable pupils, our families and our staff who were looking forward to traveling to see family, staff who were here in this country, in this city, in this area, on their own. So how could we do that when we weren't together? And we had to find ways. We changed and adapted our policies to ensure that we were ticking the right boxes for our safeguarding. We had to purchase mobile phones through school to be able to communicate without using our own. We set up, and I think this was a bit of my therapy, was for me to be able to cope and feel like I was doing a good job, to get my messages out to our community, created resources and created short video messages and videos just to share messages with our families and our pupils. We certainly, you know, this was something I recognized where we are, and I think maybe we can all perhaps relate to this, is we had these three areas. This red fear was the first thing, and, you know, people being frustrated and angry with the situation, and, you know, frustrated in school. There was complaining, and we had this anxiety and this spread of emotional fear. And my husband did a lot of this panic buying, and we ended up with a panic room. He's ex-military, and we ended up, he'd go out as a hunter-gatherer for half an hour and come back 2 hours later, having brought up the whole of Spa. I mean, thankfully in the UAE, we never went short of anything. But, and it's good for me now because I don't ever have to go shopping. I just go into the store cupboard. This was a message I really kept trying to say to my pupils and families, is we need to try and learn to accept that we can't control this. Stop letting things that were hurting us, identifying with our emotions, and being a mum with a 11-year-old who's an only child, and when she's not even allowed out to see family or friends, her only contact was with me and my husband, and my in-laws came to visit for a few weeks and ended up staying 4 months. So it was quite an interesting time. We did have to have an awareness of how we acted, and I acted looking after my pupils, but I also couldn't neglect the fact I was looking after my daughter, and identifying with emotions. I sometimes had to take her aside and say, it's okay, try to understand, and we'll try to work this through together. And to recognize that everybody was trying their best. And then obviously that growth, how we grow, how we live in the moment, and being thankful and trying to practice patience. So the changes that we obviously had to make within a school, we really had to work on managing expectations, and our head teacher produced video messages that went out, and then in Arabic and English, we produced very clear guidelines for the teachers, the pupils, and the parents. Our teachers needed to understand that they had to deliver differently, that things had to slow down, that it didn't matter if time was lost on curriculum, that the pupils had to understand that they're so conscientious and they wanted to do well. They were working a double day. And we had to say, no, please don't be working all hours, and please look after yourself. So throughout the months, I actually initiated, with the support of our senior leader team, no tech days, where the children were allowed to stop any online clinic or online distance learning and take a complete day off to go and do something different. So we had no tech days, we had time capsule challenges, we shared images as much as possible, we had virtual pupil council meetings and virtual assemblies. We also had to change the parents and help our parents to understand that things were different and they needed to try and support. However, that wasn't easy for some of our parents because some of the fathers were working away from home. And I had one family that I was supporting, and I was on the phone to the mum quite a lot. She had 7 children at home from the ages of FS to year 9. And the husband was away at work and he couldn't get back. and he desperately did need support. And it was, you know, we all had to look out for each other and look after each other. When I look back now, I think we were in a bit of a mess. We didn't know what we were we were trying to do the best, and we ended up with multiple teaching platforms, trying to be the best we could. And I remember looking at my daughter's laptop and thinking, I don't know where to start. She had a tab for maths, and she was on this for this program, and then for English. We needed to streamline, and we had to listen to our families, to our teachers, and we really need to unravel. And I do think, and I do believe, and I think our pupils would say that certainly this image to them, they got into the end of August, the start of our new term, and it was a much more ordered, well-oiled machine. We structured our teaching and learning. We had to get our children up and into a routine. And the culture of some of our pupils is, well, if they're going to come in, they're going to come to school, great. So we really had to say, no, this is your timetable, you have to follow it. So we adapted our teaching and learning and the structure of our timetable. We improved our tech skills. Most importantly, we helped and supported each other. We had virtual meetings where we shared best practice. And I've learned how to use multiple now software programs to make my teaching and learning and my lessons so much more interesting than before. And obviously, most importantly, we needed to be realistic. We needed to be honest and empathetic and say, not all of our children have printers at home or can download, or they're second language learners, or their parents and carers don't speak English. So we needed to be realistic and very much consider the different situations at home. So those lessons that we've learned, well, definitely we were honest when we reflected, we reviewed, and we weren't we were very much honest with everything we did and said, we're going to grow from this. And then we implemented a new way of thinking. We had to find different ways to communicate and to connect with all of our community. And to be adaptive and to be patient. I think that was very, very clear, especially after the first few months. So from a personal point of view, I've definitely realized that you need to be kind. However much you feel frustrated or you're hurting or you feel frustrated, you needed to be kind, not just to yourself, but just to everybody around, and accepting that it wasn't just our little bubble, but it was everybody, and we were all in it. And that was one of the first video messages that I shared with our senior school and our junior school, with all of the amazing images of what was happening, but it was very much we're in it together. 5 questions that I would ask myself, that I also shared with our community, was this: reflect and regroup. If you can't look after yourself and feel in a good place, you're not going to be able to help your students, your teachers, and your family. Now, these are my in-laws, and this was near the beginning. This was my husband decided to keep spirits up. We would have an international themed menu. So because we weren't allowed out of into the community, my in-laws were older than 70, so they weren't allowed out. My daughter was under 12, she wasn't allowed out of the house. We had extremely strict guidelines. We were only allowed to find costume props from within the house, and my husband created a menu. So we had an Arabic night, Italian night, So we got creative, and we made the most of this family time. We set up virtual sports competitions with our family in England. We set up a WhatsApp group. I taught my mum how to use WhatsApp, which was something that would never have happened, but she was forced into it, really. Had to get myself active. I put on a lot of weight, and I had to get active. So however hot it was or sweaty I got out. And my daughter, like I said, she only had us, and she was really missing her netball team. And it was something that came about later on towards the end of the summer term, where the netball coach in Dubai set up a virtual training. And she was 11 going on 12, and very self-conscious and very body image and shy. But it was one thing I did. I made her get active, and it really helped that mindset. We started Monday Monopoly nights, where there was a lot of laughter. Laughter is proven to reduce stress and to really just make you feel so much better. So I can't say that every day I felt calm. I cried in my mashed potato. I cried over something stupid, like I couldn't upload the Spanish work that was done. But I think on the whole, I did try to remain as calm as possible, and also to help support the teachers at school. We set up support groups. We set up WhatsApp groups. We were always available, and check-ins, and used Google Meet quite a lot for just informal meetings. I've read quite a lot recently about people's feelings and take on the year. And there seems to be people who have a real, this was the worst. And yes, it was. We have experienced loss over this last 10 months. Personal loss, bereavement, loss of time. But we have to really think about those positives in that journey. I've certainly felt it's given everybody a chance to think differently. My director of sport called us into a meeting last week, and he said, for the first time ever, we will have the opportunity to have a blank piece of paper and redesign a sport curriculum. This has never, ever happened, and it may not happen again for a while. So that chance to think differently, and that to be able to celebrate success, think of all those positives. It's like put a montage together and really enjoy what we've taken out. Grow professionally. I have never, before I used to be in my city, in my country, and now it is global, and I'm networking and discussing with people from everywhere, and it's the most amazing feeling to have grown those friendships and professional relationships. So I'm really grateful for that. And I think it has inspired me to think I've still got so many more years left of teaching that I may not have had, might not have felt before. So take each day by day, be grateful, try not to be stressed by the things we can't control, and let's really celebrate the end of the year and really look forward to 2021. Thank you very much.
Oh, fantastic, Louisa. Like you say, there are silver linings to everything, and we do need to look at the positive, like say, goodbye 2020. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Seda, are you okay to take over?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you. Hello, everyone. First of all, I'm so happy to be here today because it's a very fruitful conference. I'm learning, and I will be very happy to share with you. I'm from Turkey. I'm head of English language department in Güneş schools in western side of Turkey. I have completed my bachelor's degree in American culture and literature and MA in cultural studies. That's why I'm really interested in discovering other cultures and learning from them. I have been also working as an European Union project coordinator, and my main focus is on international visions on the future of education and also bilingual learning. Our school is located in northwest of Turkey, and we always emphasize a world-class education in an inclusive school environment. And we have several partnerships with schools in Africa, in UK, and we try to facilitate collaboration and exchange of good practice because this is what we need during COVID-19. So it has been a weird and tough year for all of us. I call this year as a never-ending year because new normal changed the way that we look at things. It forced us to reimagine education. So we started to think about things differently. As a school, we also faced some challenges, but we were able to come up with solutions to those problems. In March, there was too much flow of information and uncertainty, and there were different instructional models being implemented. In November, we have totally moved from hybrid learning to remote teaching. So now when we think about the whole year, everything is more settled and parents, teachers, and students are more relaxed, but still there are problems. But we understand that we can navigate education from home as well. We can go on learning from our homes as well. So New Year brought challenges to school leaders, to parents, to teachers and students because we need to adopt new way of teaching and learning. We can call this time as emergency remote teaching. At this situation, no child can be left behind. So necessary precautions should be taken to move on, to move further. I will talk about those challenges in terms of education inequality, technology, dimensions of being, and the role of parents and teachers. It is for sure that all students do not come from same backgrounds or they do not have same opportunities. So firstly, we wanted to be sure that students are psychologically and mentally okay, and they're also ready in terms of technology. Our priority was to cultivate emotional connection and develop clear communication with both parents and students. But how can we do it in virtual reality? How can we do it without having an eye contact with the students? So we provided technical support and emotional support for the students and parents. First of all, we sorted out their needs in terms of technology, maybe computer, maybe internet connection, and then we made them feel that they are not alone. Because during this time, you are not just struggling with the virus, you are struggling with the virus of anxiety and stress. Especially young learners need guidance and extrinsic motivation. What about teachers? They also need motivation because they have a huge responsibility in connecting students in a socially disengaged world. So it is impossible, almost impossible to cover everything in curriculum. So it requires teachers to create, to design more engaging lessons. So they need to develop a new way of teaching and to develop extrinsic motivation. And on virtual platform, one size does not fit for all. So teachers need to have several plans for students with different abilities. During this time, we try to use differentiation tools to take the attention of students because you cannot just make one plan and stick to it. No, you should have ABC plans. Actually, it calls teachers to spend more time on lesson planning, checking homework, giving feedback, daily updates for the parents. So it was a really stressful time. But our management had one-to-one meetings with the teachers, and we created a self-work routine at home. Because teaching from home is not very easy. First of all, we made ourselves ready psychologically. We created our houses, we designed our houses as if we are at school. And we try to take the attention of students through interactive, enjoyable activities. For example, these are some photos from our virtual travel activities. We have visited different parts of the world and introduced them about their masterpieces or symbols, and students really enjoyed that time. The most important thing is that the teacher should be really energetic and should have a genuine smile, because students can feel it even if there is a screen between us. And classroom management is a little bit difficult because you need to have some nonverbal signs to create a consistent classroom. So we have created such nonverbal signs in order to warn students from time to time, because one of the biggest problem is that students do not want to turn their cameras on, or sometimes they just stop and start talking altogether. So we have used nonverbal signs. Massive efforts were made in a very short time, and we tried to address learning crisis. And we tried to hook student interest with a challenge question, with a physical item, with PowerPoint presentations. For example, here in this photo, we made fruit salad with the students, and students really enjoyed it because they felt themselves as a part of virtual reality. It was virtual, okay, but they had an emotional connection with the teacher. And we understood that we can still be connected to the students. We can have fun activities in front of screen. As I said in the beginning, during this time, we have started to reimagine education. And this crisis actually stimulated innovation in education sector. So I will talk about those changes in terms of crisis management, learning outside the classroom, and teacher skills. In crisis, we have more questions than answers. So in crisis, we are all learners. We were, okay, socially distanced, but with our team, we were always connected. Our connection looks like Formula One pit stop crew. In this team, everybody has a task, and the team functions incredibly because they are all harmonious and they work in a coordinated way. So we try to have meetings, virtual meetings, but those virtual meetings were based upon feedback. We had demo teaching, peer observation, and at the end of the day, we gave feedback to each other, and peer support was really, really important during this time. And successful organization of teaching is based on careful lesson planning and understanding the needs of students. Our priority was well-being of students, and our management focused on that. They said that don't rush on curriculum. We cannot cover whole curriculum, but first focus on student attendance. Students should be online, should be with you on the screen, and first try to have a bond with them. At the beginning, the attention span of students was really weak, and parents were really nervous. They were interrupting the lessons. But as time goes by, they get used to the system. And one of the most important things is that online teaching is more like a teacher-centered education. So we try to change from teacher-centered to teacher-facilitated teaching, because teachers should balance teacher talking time with student talking time. You should involve the student by means of digital tools, digital games like WordWall, Educandy, or Bamboozle. So students should feel a part of this education, not it shouldn't be only teacher speaking activity. And a new teacher type emerged. I call this teacher type as home office educator. Okay, there is a traditional teacher, but that traditional teacher should have virtual skills. as Louisa said, that teacher should be online all the time, should be available, should have technical ability, should be clear in homework, should be a quick problem solver, and should have a good communication with the parents. So that teacher type or that school leader should be multitasking and at the same time flexible, because unexpected things can happen all the time. And so we cannot deny the role of teacher during this time. And as I see, there is a change in the conception of time and space. At school, we have limited time and limited space, but at home, we can connect to our students whenever we want, and we can go on our education in our bedroom or living room. We can create every corner of a house as an education center. So this is another change that I recognize. We are all going through a difficult year, and I wanted to share my experience with you because great satisfaction comes from sharing with others. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much listening to me patiently. I hope you really enjoyed the presentation. Thanks a lot.
Wow, Seda, that was amazing. Thank you very much. Yes, absolutely amazing points made there. Thank you very much. Okay, Patrick, no worries. Patrick, are you okay to finish us off? Can you take the screen, Patrick? You there?
Yes, I'm just sharing my screen now.
Thank you.
Can we see that? That's on the screen. Wonderful. Right. Good evening, everybody. I know it's different times in the evening around the world, and I've got my 15 minutes to stay to. I've got to say it's been a real privilege to go in the final, and having listened to three great speakers beforehand. And that being said, they've probably said a lot of things I would say and want to say, but it provides me with a good platform, really. My name is, as I said, Patrick O'Connor. I'm currently the head teacher of a school called West Horton High School in Bolton. At the start of the pandemic, I was the executive principal of 3 schools in Liverpool, secondary schools. And during the pandemic, around Easter time, I was asked if I would pick up another school in Bolton that was facing some challenge. And this is my 37th year since entering the profession. 28 years old as a principal, and I've worked in a variety of sectors as well. And particularly working in schools that have faced some level of significant challenge, be it financially or standards or otherwise. So sort of a wide-ranging experience, but nothing prepares you for a pandemic, as I'm sure many of you will say, have said, and the previous speakers have said as well. Although I've got to say, and this may be a strange thing to say, is I've really enjoyed the privilege of leading a school during the pandemic. The staff have been amazing, the students, the families, the communities have been amazing, and I've never known a time like that either. As we approach our Christmas holidays, we break up this Friday. My staff are on the knees, my students are on the knees. I have staff and students self-isolating through positive cases or being close to people with positive cases, and we really do feel we're in the thick of it. But people who are, as members of staff in school, we join because we want to impact on people's lives, and people really are helping to change and support people's lives in the truest sense. So it's a real privilege for me. Students are obviously our priority in schools, but I want to focus tonight really on the challenge and opportunities of leading our staff during the pandemic. So I'm going to talk much more about the leadership I've employed and the leadership of others within schools as well. A lot of the strategies, I've learned lots tonight from the 3 previous speakers. I could probably say other things that I've done that are similar or different or otherwise, but a lot of my focus will be around how I've worked with colleagues. So please don't think I don't care about children, but you'll see where I'm coming from with this as we go forwards. So one of the first things I did, particularly when I started the new school, at the school that was in some challenge in the middle of the pandemic, in the thick of it, one of the things we had to do was really get the staff to point in the right direction and make sure that our values-based vision, why we were doing what we were doing, we were solid. Because when you know why you're doing something, it's much easier to be able to deal with crises. And the school that I went into was a little bit rudderless and needed that. And people very quickly rallied around why we were doing what we were doing, and we were able to set that going forwards. And that's really a really good way of allowing us then to point that direction, and for me as a leader to keep pushing us in that direction, keeping us towards that. The actual strategies we used quite clearly need to change. So the school I went into, there was virtually no online learning. So we had a major investment to make in real time, providing laptops, machines access, internet access for families, notwithstanding all the food we were providing and the vouchers and so on that we were having to provide for students in the area where we have sort of multiple levels of social disadvantage in the areas that I work in. But the values-based vision, we were pointing this direction. The strategies needed to change, and very quickly with the staff, we rallied around the things that we were doing. There was no time to think. We just set off doing what we thought and then created strategy as we went along, keeping the vision at the forefront of why we were doing, and that didn't change. And really the thing that we took with us was the moral purpose that we took from that, and staying true to that moral purpose and the values and keeping ourselves pointing forwards. That really helped and gave people confidence in a sea of sort of a very choppy sea and a sea of uncertainty as we move forwards, that we were in this together and why we were doing to help our students to really believe and succeed during this crisis as well. And the positivity, I think, as Louisa, you said quite eloquently towards the end of yours, absolutely keeping focused on where we go. Those students in year 11 here, the students coming to the examination system at 16 in the schools that I was in, and 18 for the A-levels, those students who didn't know what exams they were going to do or not going to do needed to know they were still worth themselves as much as they always were worth, and keeping that at the forefront of our minds, and for parents as well, who were really quite worried about their precious son or daughter. Out of 1,350 students in a school, their son and daughter is the most important person to them. So keeping them safe and secure, but making sure during the pandemic they also were succeeding was a really important challenge to us. So once we'd got people pointing the direction and I'd shared that vision, we'd got our strategy and taken our culture and purpose with us to take us there. Really, it was around communication with everybody, and this idea of, you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So keeping ourselves focused there, and with that then the 3 C's, as I'll call it, we communicated with confidence and with clarity to make sure people knew where we were, and that gave a strength to people. Now, I don't adhere to and subscribe to at all a hero headship approach or a hero leadership approach, but I believe much more in hero makers rather than heroes. So for me, it's around lifting the members of staff within the school, and then for me to lift the other leaders, for the leaders to lift the teachers to lift the support staff they work with, and for the teachers then to do the real job, the real business with the children in the classroom. So it was about removing barriers and providing opportunities so they could do what they needed to do as they went forwards. So really vital that we did those in those ways moving forwards. I've used this slide. It's the one slide my wife allows me to use. I'm going to say it was on her 21st birthday when she was 40, and it was taken 13 years ago. Well, I say when she was 21. So that's my wife. That's me at the side. The little blonde one at the bottom is now 16, doing A-levels in the UK, and the big one just off Mel's shoulder is now 6'5" with a big beard in his 4th year of teaching science in a secondary school in Salford in the UK. But that's my family. And I think it was shared again earlier before again about why we do what we do. My family was in the middle of this crisis. My 16-year-old son, who was doing his GCSEs at the time, we had the same issues and things there. We had the boys, the oldest one's in his own house, but the others were self-isolating at home. So how we kept fit and healthy and so on is an important part of what I'm going to come on to now about how we do that. Because although when the schools closed in the UK and things went into lockdown and we were still opening our schools for key workers. So the nurses, doctors, people who worked in the shops, etc., their children were still in school, and some of our more vulnerable children were educating. The staff were doing that from home with a small skeleton staff in school, catering for those students who needed some real intense support, along with some of the other, we have school-based police officers and social workers and those sort of things in the areas that I work, and we're able to use those as a resource as well. But part of that process, as well as care and support for the children, providing food up to 40 in that first term, of £45,000 worth of food on top of what the government were providing to keep our families fed. For many of them, providing support, providing counselling, providing resources, an additional 250 laptops and internet devices we had to buy to make sure that students could then access the online. There may have been a laptop at home, but if there were 5 children at home all accessing the same device, we had issues for access. So I thought, stuff it, we're just doing it. So we did that. I went to government and said that's what we need to do. We cleared the funds. We'd saved money on things like supply teachers. We'd saved money on the heating and those sort of costs within the building, because yes, it's a bit cold in the UK. We'd saved on those sort of things, without really knowing the full figures, we just bought those things to make sure we did it, staying true to this is our moral purpose, that's where we're going, what strategies we need to put in place, always making decisions based on those. But this is the point now around as a leader that I will point out now, is that I use the analogy of the oxygen mask, this idea of as a member of staff in school, all staff in school, you must look after yourself first before helping others, so we can make the biggest difference for our students. And I believe passionately around that aspect of what we do. So within the school, the day one slide, the first slide in the new school that I shared with this slide here of my family, with that phrase saying, yes, it's about the students, but to make sure we can do it for the students, we've got to make sure our oxygen masks are firmly in place so we can do what we're doing and we look after each other. And that's really been the theme that's lifted us through. Standards have massively improved in this school during the time we've been there. The school behaviour was a real issue. The use of bubbles, as we've done it in small groups, we've sorted behaviour instantly. It really has transformed the school. COVID has been a real positive for this school in crisis, because it's allowed us to get a hold of the school and really shape a direction, and for the whole community to come behind. So it's, in terms of school improvement, it's not stopped us in terms of what we're doing, but we've used this as our central approach. So I use a very tongue-in-cheek phrase that as a head teacher, I can regard myself as a well-being supermodel. And I throw the same challenge to my colleagues, that we must model the behaviours we want to see. Whatever that is within school, you want to see it, you walk the talk, you do it. And actually we model our well-being by owning our own mental health and well-being. So if there's an issue, we've got to be able to see our own situation, own our own situation, solve our issues, and actually put things in place to do so. So like many, I put a few pounds on. I've now lost a few pounds. I got a grip of those things as we went through. And I use the 5 ways to well-being, a wonderful piece of research and a hashtag worth following wherever you are in the world, set up by a guy called Martin Rea, called Teacher 5 a Day, for any members of staff. And within there, it talks about the 5 ways to well-being, which are around staying connected and being connected. And that's the number one issue I found: isolation for colleagues and also for students, in keeping people connected through the meetings we have, the way we celebrate, the way we do have fun together. So the Loo Roll Challenge and staff creating videos that we could share with students, making fools of ourselves, lip syncing to songs, and all those things alongside the serious stuff was so important. Being active, obviously keeping yourself going, is one of the 5 ways to well-being, and keeping learning ourselves as well. We've all had that learning curve, unless you're also already a good IT person yourself. We've all had to learn new ways of doing those. This idea of noticing things around us and being mindful and taking time out to be mindful. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see my pinned tweet is my tortoise, who came out of hibernation the week we went into hibernation in lockdown, and I shared a picture of him playing football. That's at over 2.1 million views. I've spent loads of time playing with my tortoise in the garden during lockdown and beyond, and actually just taking time out to lay on the floor next to this little creature and watch, to empty our minds, is really so important. And a final one for me, this idea of volunteering and helping each others. Me speaking here tonight and just sharing my experience is one example of volunteering to support. I coach many leaders and leaders who are in crisis, head teachers, executive head teachers, other leaders as well. And again, as a service, to be able to support people, to be able to deal with the situation they're in. All those things as a well-being supermodel I want my colleagues to do the same. Doing that, you put yourself in such a good place to work. So that's been a central mantra of mine going through. Close your eyes if you're a bit squeamish. We went to, if you can't see that because the screen's where you'll see, we managed to get away in the summer, not the backpacking we would normally do, but this was down Pont de Gard in France, where we were able to travel. Every year, as a former PE teacher myself as well, I do a somersault off a rock or somewhere at some place. I've had 3 spinal breaks. I broke my back twice, I broke my neck once. When I was 21, I had to learn to walk again, 6 months in hospital, etc. So every year until I can't do it anymore, I do a somersault somewhere in the world. That's just what I do to keep going. And again, I share, and I'm loud and proud around that. So a fat fellow in his 50s, I'm sorry for sharing that, but this is just to make the point. So to move on from there, the anatomy of a well-being heart during COVID, and if I'm talking about these things, for me, a variety of things that we do within there, and actually policy and practice. We changed some things really early doors. I spoke to the governors, I spoke to the staff of what we were doing and put things in place. We needed to look at the curriculum we put in place to allow children to catch up and keep up over the things they were missing. Pedagogy has been spoken about, major changes around there. actually formalising. If people are still struggling to mark the way we've marked before, we had to bin and scrap and just say, let's do this again. So I talk about kissing all the time. What we're going to keep, what we're going to improve, what we're going to stop, and what we're going to start. And actually, during this process, everything we looked at, we did it was called kissing the swan. The swan was, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and next steps. And within that, how do we kiss it? What we're going to keep in this process, what we're going to improve, what we're going to stop, and what we're going to start. And we do that at every lamppost as we go along in everything we're looking at to do to allow us to move things forward, including our approach to quality assurance. And we've been so much things that were done because that's the way we've done it. In the UK, we have this thing called Ofsted. It's what Ofsted will like. Who says it's what Ofsted will like? Let's just do what's right. That's where we're heading. What do we do to get there? So we've carried on with those things. Things like meetings. Our meeting cycles we adjusted. I cancelled many meetings. I put in place 2 briefings, a Monday morning online for everybody briefing, a Wednesday morning. I insisted everybody, including the cleaners, were able to access it. We just had a student receptionist and the main receptionist who rotated, who missed it each time. So all 156 staff in the school could join. We went in to be able to do that. The Monday one is more business. The Wednesday one was our wellbeing celebration, where we talked about the achievements we'd had during that week. And it was a real positivity, including something called our mental health and wellbeing star of the week for staff as well. 188 nominations this week alone, for staff, by staff, for people who've made a positive difference to those. And every week we do that. I put it in a random wheel spinner and someone wins a box of chocolates. Actually, people just know they're doing things and being acknowledged for helping and supporting each other. We've put into our meeting cycle as well, every 3rd Wednesday, we actually leave school and the students have left early. The meeting is, the directed time from me is, you must now do something this evening that supports your mental health and wellbeing, something that makes you happy. Go and pick your kids up from school. Go and do some sport. Go for a walk. I've got one woman who goes home and does her ironing on a Wednesday night before her kids come home, because it means she then doesn't have to do it on Sunday night and she can have Sunday night off. You use it however you want, but whatever does to make you happy. And those things, the staff have really, they buy in and go in the extra mile around the goodwill around those things. The relationships, part of what we do here with parents, with governors, with our CPD, about how we've moved things, and the one-to-ones I have with colleagues all the time. First meeting, during the start of the crisis as well, I insisted every line manager that phoned home or had a contact, the first 3 questions were around the other person's well-being. How are you? How are the kids? What about this? And if there was any issue that came up, that then trumped everything else we were going to talk about and delayed and off-railed the meeting. So putting those things in place, which basically physically say I care, but also demonstrate that we care in terms of we go forward. So our plans, made sure our development plans reflected the priorities we've got, and made sure that the well-being ran through the middle of those things and how we look after ourselves. The talent that we use within school, set up a talent development program where from people arrived in the school as a newly qualified teacher, as a trainee, all the way through to head teacher, prioritising capacity building, including the courses we do, people shadowing, because we've had quite a group of staff who've been going off self-isolating because we've been in the buildings working. We've had to make sure, say for office staff, that somebody who does my cover, it's not just that one person, but somebody else in the office knows how to do that just in case. So shadowing and doing those jobs has been great for people's learning and great for people to be able to build that capacity as we move forward. At the same time, I've increased, because people have had some additional time at home and so on, the amount of staff that have got funded master's degrees or other leadership programs that we offer within our school. I bought all members of staff a book according to their priorities and their leadership stage, so that we could have reading groups online as well as part of our CPD. So staff not only having a school library, but a library for staff with books for them to be able to continue learning. This idea of goodwill, I sought out and asked staff, okay, goodwill is one of the things we talk about, but how can we create it? How can we proactive? So for staff to be able to talk me, I do 2 staff perception questionnaires in this new school already. One at the beginning and one on day 50. We did one with how are we doing? What can we do better to improve? What advice do you want to give me as the head teacher to improve things? What's the best thing about working here? What's the one thing you would improve? How would you describe your well-being right now? And for people to throw in those things they want to do. So our PE equipment wasn't being used. So we were able to ship out a lot of our fitness mats and weights so staff could use them at home to be able to keep doing some of those things we were doing if they didn't have them because the gyms were closed, etc. Making sure within school, a staff room wasn't really relevant because we've got staff teaching in bubbled areas. So making sure there was a refrigerator, kettle, microwave, free tea and coffee in those areas so staff could do those things and responding to those issues as we move forwards. and then think about the cost later. In terms of those, the secret admirer, this came from some staff. We've set up our secret bubble buddy society, where all staff, you know, like people sometimes do a secret Santa. Well, this is a secret Santa for the year. You can't spend more than £20 in the entire year, but people say with the sort of things they like. So they might like Cadbury's chocolate, or they might like to drink beer, or they might like flowers, or whatever they like. And the idea is you just go and drop a little anonymous thing on someone's desk, or you know their duty day, so when they come in, there's a hot cup of coffee on their table when they walk in, and it's just little surprises, and I'm going to call them love notes, but notes you've got to show that someone in there that cares, and that's gone down really well. That's led by staff for staff, and actually this is about creating and kickstarting the random acts of kindness, and then that's just taken off massively, and then making sure that nobody or no groups are actually left out within here. So keeping the well-being heart healthy. For me, it's listening to people. So we should, for me, it's always about encouraging, engaging, and empowering everybody to own their own well-being, to have challenging conversations with each other. That doesn't sound very well-being, does it? But actually, if people are bottling up feelings and have got an issue, I've been teaching all staff in groups, all staff, how to have challenging conversations with each other, and some of the stems, how to start those and how to do it. So they stop becoming challenging the earlier you have them and become professional conversations. And this idea that quite often people don't have a conversation until it's really boiling and bubbling over. I may have to explain this saying, but my grandma used to say a stitch in time saves 9. So you stitch a tear in a trouser on your first thing, it just takes 1 stitch. If you do it early, if you leave it, it always gets bigger and just gets harder to repair. So it's about having the conversations earlier as we go forwards. The staff perception questionnaires, focus groups that I have for a variety of issues, one-to-one meetings that people volunteer to come into. So making sure we're listening. This idea of care, rather than waiting for people to fall off, I'm allowing people to self-refer for occupational health, external support to come in and do that. I buy in 3 days per month of an occupational health worker to actually come in and physically work with us rather than just waiting for people to be in crisis. So we're proactively doing those things. I put counsel in place. We have a school-based counsellor 4 days per week who does a chunk of the time now supporting colleagues in there. I use support plans for colleagues in a really positive way, not a support plan meaning I'm getting rid of you, as it quite often can mean, but genuine support in place for people to grow and develop and to own their own situation. That's gone down really well. We've done a lot of online training for mental health first aiders. You would do physical aid. We've seen a bigger need, so we've trained many more within that school. Of 156 staff, that are currently 6 people trained as mental health first aiders. Again, it's not about sitting down and them being the experts, it's about them recognising and then signposting the services we have and pushing things forwards. Ensuring then, on top of that as well, that all is fair, things are equitable, transparent and robust, a real honesty and openness. It was spoken about earlier on as well around not hiding. Bad news doesn't get better with age. It's sooner you say it, people get time to get moving forward with those. So making sure we're putting those things in place. Our performance management, which is very much data driven, is much more developmental driven now. I've done 65 working days since starting in September with this new group of staff, and we've just instantly transformed the approach to performance management with people owning their own situation now. How we operate leave of absence, return to works, the counselling we offer for colleagues as well has made a major difference to people feeling valued and listened to and much more open to talking about their own situations. Final slide coming up. This is just one example of our mental health and wellbeing star of the week. People may nominate somebody here because they've just bought them a cup of coffee and after a cold duty outside. Or as I had one member of staff earlier in the year, her mum suddenly unexpectedly died, and she finished up having to take 9 days away and out of school. Well, when she came back, colleagues had sorted out, marked work, done her lessons, everything else. So when she came back to a completely clean sheet to be able to come straight back in without all those things you get when you've been off for a period of time. And she nominated them. It could be as little as large. I don't put the reasons up here. It's just the names, and people can then ask why was it, and we'll tell them. It's just enough for some people to know they've been nominated. We communicate our achievements and celebrate those achievements, as well as some of the, if we're having to isolate students, we'll communicate that, but we'll also communicate the successes of students and staff through our website, through social media, and this idea of really communicating and celebrating what we do. We were awarded a gold award through one of the alliances in the UK for our approach to looking after staff during the pandemic. I didn't apply for that for the head teacher. The staff in school, the group applied to say, we think we're doing something good, come and have a look. And again, it just allowed the staff to be owning their school, this idea of not being the hero, but the hero maker, and staff lifting the situation themselves. I do believe that as schools, the best schools have had to become collaborative entrepreneurs, looking at the issues you've got, getting the right people around the right table at the right time to solve the right problems. And hierarchy shouldn't feature. So if the NQT, the new qualified teachers, got the best idea, they're in. If it's the learning support assistant, they're in. If it's the deputy, they're in. It's a balance. And actually, as a head, I've always got a power of veto, but actually if I've given a clear direction to colleagues, let's see what they create. That's some of our best success stories have come from those people who are actually in the trenches doing the work, moving things on. And we've managed to host a whole host of organisational activities, including to share the news of what we're doing. Again, this idea of volunteering, and that's, I suppose, what I'm doing today is just sharing what we've done as the others have done. Because again, it gives other people maybe ideas or inspiration, or somebody to reach out and say, would you mind having a conversation because we're having this specific issue? And again, I think the wonderful thing about the network that you've set up here through the True Partnerships is part of that connectivity that we like. So I will end my presentation at that point and back over to you.
Wow, Patrick, I think everybody wants to come and work for you.
Sorry.
No, honestly, we could have listened to you for a lot longer, believe me. Yes, I think it's very inspiring. So much so we haven't actually got an awful lot of questions because we've been so comprehensive in what you've been talking about. I think there were a couple in there. One was about, I think actually it was aimed at Seda, but probably from James, about how to encourage students to engage a bit more when it's online. Are the digital tools you use? Because obviously when they're at home, you can't see how engaging they are and whether they are actually paying any attention at all. Is how to get them engaged. I think that was from James, but Seda, would you be okay to maybe?
Yeah, sure. We have been using digital tools like quizzes, EduCandy, and WordWall. These are really interactive games, and we have been also using for reward system Class Dojo. Students like being rewarded, students like points. So in order to keep classroom management more, we have been using Class Dojo, and we have been also preparing some questions from WordWall. And during the lessons, we can give remote control to students. They really love to be the host of the lesson, and they can play those games even in the lesson, or you can give it as a after homework digital tool as well.
Wonderful, thank you. That's some good ideas there. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Actually, we have a few again about. I think we're looking for some other questions on here. There's one question for all presenters, so you can decide who wants to answer it, about the advantages of hybrid teaching and managing schools continuing after the pandemic. Because one thing I think has come across, it's been an opportunity for change, and there's been lots of good change going on, which we don't want to throw out again. So what sort of things like what's going to be continuing when things go back to normal, whatever the new normal is, and like I say, so is there anyone, Patrick, you want to jump in with that?
I can start off if you like, and I'm sure others will say the same. When I've talked before about kissing the swan in terms of what we do and do that, we're actually getting ready. We don't think it won't just end and we've started. We're looking at our phased exit from lockdown and how we move forwards. And so at the moment, all our food in school is served pre-wrapped. We're not serving any meals where people sit down normally. We've got permission to do that at the moment. And we've got permission to, as in from the government, saying we can now move on to do these things. We're choosing not to do it at the moment because we're going to do some work with the students, first of all, about what's the best way to set out the dining room, what's the best way to operate that. So we're not rushing into any decisions, but absolutely we're going to keep some of the things. Some of the online parents' evenings have been really welcomed. We'll keep some physical parents' evenings still, but some of the keeping in touch with parents' evenings have been so much better. In fact, some of the things we can do where staff can also do those parents' evenings from their own home. So they cut the travel down, they're at home when they've finished and be able to do those things. We're going to look much more creatively about how we do those. And equally for staff meetings, sometimes staff meetings don't need a presentation and a physical presence. It can be, you can access this online. This is the time we put aside, if they choose to do it at another time in their own time, they can do, to try and give some flexibility back to people professionally. I could go on, I'll stop there, but for me, it's about reviewing what we do and moving forwards, but absolutely we will be keeping some things.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else? Louisa, were you about to?
The only thing I was going to say, I mean, we, just adding to the bit about obviously the hybrid, and for the students that aren't coming back, we've had years 7, 8, and 9 have not been in school until January the 3rd, they will be allowed back. So they'll have been out for 10 months. So obviously well-being is a huge thing there. But some of our students and quite a lot of our Emirati students won't be coming back. So we'll have to rejig the teaching to create classes where if we've had 2 teachers on a lesson, one will take continue an online distance learning version whilst the other teaches the face-to-face. But well-being, I've been looking at digital apps and applications, and I found one from Australia called Pulse, which is an application that's run through the children's school emails, and it can be on the device or the phone, and it's a 30 to 60 second check-in. So rather than sometimes waiting for young people they're not in front of us, so we can't always spot the physical signs and the telling signs that children are struggling. And even some of our really able, very confident students have found this difficult. So if they happen to be the child at home, rather than waiting for them to reach a point where it's so bad and contacting us, we're going to trial in January for 3 months, we're going to trial this Pulse application and try to see if we can get this real data whereby we've got a check-in for these children. So it's literally 5 questions of their well-being. So I'm really excited about it. It's come from Australia and it's really based out of Positive Education. But for me, it really is important that it's giving our children that are still distance learning the opportunity to connect in a really simple way where they don't necessarily need to find the words. And there is a vulnerable button, which is a direct connection to a member of staff that they trust. So I'm really hopeful that it will still it will help us develop that well-being. So that's, I suppose, a way of how we still connect with those pupils that are on distance learning. But ideally, we want to try and see as many faces back as possible.
Good point. I agree. I think it's the well-being influences learning so much anyway. You don't learn if you're not feeling in the right place. And well-being has been brought to the fore in the pandemic, which I think is a good thing. So people are being more listened to, being more caring, and that sort of thing. Because the one thing we find with children is they need peers more than us adults do. That's what they thrive on. That's the biggest thing about school, is you're there with your mates and you're learning together, and it's that social interaction, which is what has been missing, but has been brought to the forefront again, which is great. I don't know, Seda and Tatiana, would you like to answer some of the questions, or is Tatiana still with us? I'm not sure if she's gone actually. Seda?
So I totally agree with Patrick and Louisa. One of the advantages of hybrid learning is that you can access to parents anytime, and you can, for example, when we are at school, we need to have parents meeting face to face, and it's maybe a little bit can be a little bit burden for the parents because they need to come to school, they need to spend extra time. But when they are at home, it is easier for them to connect to the teacher and ask their questions. So teachers are available. And this is a really advantage of hybrid learning, and also for staff meetings. These are all online, so you don't need to spend more time on the way, or you're just comfortable at home, and you can share everything on the screen. You can share your documents. So it's an advantages of hybrid learning, I think.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, Seda. Yeah, again, I mean, we could go on all night. There's so many good things have come out. Like, so we're all looking, which is fantastic, all the positiveness that's come out from this pandemic and the advantages we can use. We've had one recently about flipped learning, and I think the ways of learning is going to change, and it will benefit more of the students in the long run. So there isn't really many more questions. If anyone wants to put a hand up with any questions, I'll put something in the chat. We can do some more questions now, or we can share this recording and carry on the Facebook page. So as members of the Facebook page, you can also keep communicating on there. So unless anyone wants any particular ones at the moment, I'll say thank you very, very much for fantastic speeches, everybody. And we'll see you again in the new year. Have a lovely Christmas. Thanks very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.